All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is a demo theater titled QML and JavaScript, no browser required. This is native, QML working with a JavaScript engine behind the scenes, not running within a browser. My name is Michael Timms. I'm a lead developer for our ArcGIS Runtime SDK for Qt. And I'm joined with Jen Trieu, and she's the product owner of our ArcGIS Runtime SDK for Qt. So on the agenda today, we're not going to spend too much time talking about how you set your environment up for QML. We're just going to really compare, what it is to kind of know about what QML is and how it compares to JavaScript and what that's all about in comparing them. We're going to talk about native apps, why you would want to build a native app, go over Qt and QML, explain what Qt is and what the QML language is. Then we're going to talk about JavaScript and how we can use that to build native apps. So how many people right now use JavaScript, like program in JavaScript? Pretty much all of you probably wouldn't be here unless you were using JavaScript. How about any of you use the ArcGIS Runtime SDK for Qt? Listen, cool. How about any of you using App Studio to build apps? Okay. The purpose of this presentation is really going to be to demystify native app development. If you know how to use JavaScript and HTML5, then you'll be able to build apps using QML and Qt. So why do we want to build native apps? Why go through that trouble to build native apps maybe when you already have JavaScript web apps that you're building? Well, there's a couple reasons. You might want to work online and offline. You can think of ArcGIS Collector as an example, where you take data offline and make edits to your data in your application, and then you go back online to sync those edits back to the server. Those types of offline workflows are really optimized for native applications. There's access to hardware and sensors that you get with native apps. You can get your location, you can edit features, you can take a picture as an attachment with your camera, add that attachment to your feature and sync that up to your feature service. Get access to GPS, Bluetooth, NFC for peer-to-peer sharing. Those are the type of capabilities you can really leverage the capabilities of your device. You get great performance with native apps, access to the full power of the device and the GPU. Publish apps to the stores to ease your deployment, App Store, the Apple Store, and Google Play stores. But that's all great, but there's really a challenge involved when building native apps for all the various platforms. You got Mac and Linux and Windows and Android and iOS and Windows Universal. So you have all these platforms I just mentioned. You got a lot of devices. You got your iPads and your iPhones and different Android devices, Galaxy, Nexus devices, MacBooks, Linux boxes. And then you've got a bunch of different patterns or languages that you need to work with, like Swift, Objective-C, C#, Java, C++, etc. And even various IDEs and frameworks that you'd be working with, such as maybe like Gradle you use for Android development to sort of ease that development process. So this can all really start to look daunting when you picture this all in for native app development. It may require you to hire multiple folks within your company to work on different platforms. And that kind of can deter you a little bit. But I'm here to tell you today that you can build native apps with your JavaScript skills and with Qt. So what is Qt? What is QML? And how is it related to JavaScript? Well, Qt and QML is a cross-platform framework. It's used to build native apps. The Qt company has been in the cross-platform native app industry for quite some time now, probably over 20 years now that they've been doing this. You've got your same source code for building apps across the multiple platforms. So I could code my application, say on my MacBook, get it running on Mac, push that code up to my GitHub repository, go over to my Windows machine, pulled that code down, and literally build that same application for Windows. Everything in Qt's powered by C++ on the back end, so it's really, really fast. And this fast framework's exposed through a language called QML. And QML is built on top of a JavaScript engine. So that's where they sort of tie into each other, as QML is just running on top of a JavaScript engine where you can actually combine the two. And then we bring in the power of Esri and ArcGIS and built on top of this QML language to provide the power of ArcGIS Runtime to QML developers, to JavaScript developers. So yeah, it brings really the power of ArcGIS to your devices. So that's great. The great thing about QML is the declarative code is really easy to read. You can look at it, and it's sort of this CSS, JSON-like syntax. If you can read what's up there on the screen, sort of these key value pairs, they call them properties in QML. So it's a declarative UI. They describe what the UI looks like. Here we have a button, sort of declared out with some properties defined. But also you can have imperative JavaScript code handle events, or you can write your custom business logic in JavaScript code alongside your QML. You get dynamic property binding with JavaScript expressions, so you can have, in this case, the map load status. Once that actually evaluates to being loaded, then this button would enable. So it saves you time in writing that code when you can just use property binding to do that behavior. And then we bring in the ArcGIS Runtime that fully integrates into the QML language and the Qt framework. So let's tie in JavaScript a little bit more into QML so we know what we're talking about with JavaScript and QML. If you understand JSON and JavaScript, QML is going to come naturally. I hear it all the time at the island. Folks come from the web. They're used to working in the web environment. They get on to QML and they like the kind of look and feel that it provides, where it looks a lot like JavaScript. So within QML, you can actually call JavaScript functions. You can have JavaScript functions, invoke those, and use those. Bind to properties, so you can easily update the UI components, like I mentioned. Implements the 5th edition of ECMA 262. Means you get access to language standard types and functions. For instance, object, array, math, and date. JavaScript's integrated into the Qt Creator IDE, so things like IntelliSense. There's also a QML lint tool that you can use. You'll get syntax highlighting with the Qt Creator IDE. It's really the IDE of choice to use for your QML. Any major differences than the browser? Well, there's no DOM or window object. There's no Dojo jQuery, other frameworks. Instead, what you're doing is you're building on top of the Qt framework with its JavaScript engine that it packages in, based on that ECMA 262, like I mentioned. So JavaScript expressions. How do JavaScript expressions work? You can bind properties to JavaScript expressions. I kind of showed that a little bit. This causes the UI to update automatically. I don't have to listen for like the map to be loaded and then code that logic in. You can code up any JS expression, no matter how complex, to be able to do this type of binding from JavaScript. So let's take a look at a little bit of example code here. Actually, this entire presentation is running in QML just to kind of show you the power of QML to actually build the UI and run that within QML. So here I have sort of some side-by-side code with an app. Just to go through the code real fast, here I have a map view, and nested inside of that is a map. That's how you actually add the map to the map view. And then further on, base map nested with some ArcGIS vector tile layers. Now we've got a few of these vector tile layers added as our base map, so they can be added as different base map types. But one of them is only visible at a certain time, and it's based on this property, is ambient light bright. So that's just a Boolean property, and when it's true, one of the vector tile layers displays. When it's false, the other one displays. And down here, graphics overlay, I have two different renderers. I don't actually have the code up for these renderers, but one of them is going to display sort of a light theme renderer versus a dark theme renderer based on whether this is ambient light bright property is true. So you can use these ternary operators in your expressions as well. And these there's many sensors that are provided by QML. Here's just one of them, ambient light sensor. You can hook up to its on reading changed signal handler, and then you can check whether that reading level is dark or not. So triple equal ambient light reading dark. If it is, then the ambient light bright is false. Otherwise, it's true. And that's pretty much how we get this behavior. So let me switch over onto my Android device. Here I have Android sort of running and cast to my desktop screen, pretty much this tablet. So you can see I'm on this light theme. I can add a couple graphics that are displayed in red. So this is my light theme. If I go ahead and put this tablet underneath the table, oh, it's not refreshing. Let's see. Give me a second.
You just have to trust us to come under the table and look at it.
Yeah, I might have to boot this up again. Give me 1 second. Sometimes the Visor app will freeze up on you. Give it a few more seconds. If it doesn't come up, you might have to just trust me or come over and look at it. But the idea is that when it's actually not detecting enough light, it's going to switch the theme, and that property binding will kick in, and it'll switch our base maps. Well, it's not going to come up. So let's pass it over to Jen. She's going to finish off the rest of this presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Can you guys all hear me all right? All the way in the back? Okay, good. Okay, so can you swap it to 3, please? Thank you. So since we said that this whole presentation is written in QML, I'm going to continue this presentation on my iPad. So Michael showed you an example where we can tap into the device sensor because it's a native app. There's other things that you can tap into, such as the camera as well as your file system, something that you cannot really do if it's not a native app. Now I would like to talk to you about how to use JavaScript in QML. So QML is a declarative language. By this, I mean that you can define your whole UI. But you can and you will eventually want to write some JavaScript functions because you want to be able to handle some sort of events, or you don't just want to display a map, you want to interact with your map and do something about it. So let's say that I declare a visual component in QML, a button. I'll need to write some JavaScript code to respond to an event, like the event, let's say that every time I click on that button, I would want to do something. I can use any sort of the basic var type in my functions, like in JavaScript. It can store numbers, string, object, arrays, and other functions. As Michael pointed out, it's based off of ECMAScript 5th editions. So you know that you have access to object, array, math, date, just to name a few objects, as well as functions such as console log. For more information on anything that QML support, you can go to this website, and it should give you a pretty good tour of everything that is currently supported. Okay, so let's look at a JavaScript function inside of QML. So you have the function declaration. I think you notice that we use the function keyword followed by the function name. And inside of the parentheses, we have the parameters. So here I only have one. To call that function, I just need to call it by its name, and then I'm passing it, here a function for a callback. I can also use array, as I pointed out earlier, and then for that array, I can push some items in. I can use a for loop, a for each loop, a while loop. All of those things are supported in QML. And here I have my conditional. I can use a triple equal operation. It's the same thing as in JavaScript in a browser. I'm using console log. And I can also use the date object and the math object. And then after declaring the date object, I can call to UTC string. Works the same way as in the browser. Math, I'm just calling a simple math function that's the square root. And here we have the callback. So I just want to point out that the whole point of this slide is not to teach you guys or like show you guys something new. We just want to draw the similarities between JavaScript in a browser as well as JavaScript in QML. Okay, so the next one is an interactive demo. So how can I call JavaScript from a JS file, right? So when you have a lot of like JavaScript function, or you have something that is non-trivial, you want to separate all of that logic into another file. So in a way, you can call it in another QML file, or you can reuse it later in another project. So you want to isolate that code. So let's see what is this doing. So every time that I click on the rectangle, you see that the color changes from red to blue, right? So in my JavaScript file, I have a function that takes two parameters. So I would check what's the current text. So if it's blue, I will just change the color of my rectangle to red and vice versa, and I'm just updating the text. So how would I use it in my QML file? So going back to my QML file, I will import that JavaScript file. And in order to use a function inside, I will have to call JS helper dot the function that I want to use in that file. It's simple because I only have one, so I'm not going to confuse you guys about that. So if I go here, every time I have a rectangle, so every time that I click on that rectangle, so on the on-click signal, you see that I can update my code right here. So I'm passing to it the color rectangle, right? And I'm passing to it the color text right here. So I can update. So the next one. Let's say that you have something even more involved, even more complicated, and you want to be able to call JavaScript function, like you want to use another JavaScript function within your other JavaScript files. You can do that. So let's look at our first JavaScript file called random color. Here I have 4 functions. The first one will return to me a random color in RGB. The next one will return it to me in hex. And the 2 other ones is just helper function that I'm using to compute a random number, either between 0 and 255. The other one is for hex. So inside of my JavaScript file, to be able to call the function in random color, I just have to call Qt.include and the name of the JavaScript file that I want to use. And here I don't have to, use any sort of like words. I can just use the functions like directly. I can just call those functions directly. So in my else statement, I just get a random color in RGB, and then Sorry, I'm just checking if everyone was still awake by now. I didn't like bored you. Okay, and the next one is since the text get like a color in hex and not in RGB, is why that I had to have another function that would do a random color in hex. And then I'll just updating the color, the text to random, so I'm getting a random color, right? So for the QML file, it's the same thing, nothing has changed. I'm just calling the same function, and all the object is in my helper.js file. So when I click now, you see that I have a random color. Okay, it's random, so it's not me that picked the pink color. So it's just going like this. Asynchronous programming with QML. So you can do asynchronous programming in QML. Why would you want to do this? So look at that next slide. So how do we do that? So asynchronous programming in QML works with a signal and an event handler, which is the same thing as an event and an event handler. So here in my little code snippet for the map view, I have a signal called mouse click. And for the signal handler, it's just putting a prefix in front of my signal name, so it will be on mouse click. So every time that I click somewhere in my map view, I want to do some sort of imperative JavaScript code. So right here, every time that I click on my map view, in the signal handler, I will just log you clicked at and the mouse coordinate. Okay, so let's go for a little demo. So that's like, what's cool about QML is like I can build in my demo into my slide, and I don't have to kind of like switch in and out of my presentation. Here I have a simple application that have a vector tile layer, and I'm using a route task, an online route task, and I'm also using a graphics overlay where you can see my two graphics, A and B. A is the start of my route, and B is my destination. So let's look at the code. Basically, when I click on the button, this is the code on the left is the code that will kind of get kicked off when I click on that button. What I would do is to take the geometry of my two graphics, the origin and the destination, and set it as my route parameter, and I will kick off the solve route task at that point. So let's do that. So while this is happening, well, it happened really quick because ArcGIS is so powerful. Anyways, what I wanted to show is that even when it was happening, I was still able to move my map. I was still able to interact with my whole UI. So it's why that you want to use asynchronous programming. So let's look at what happened in the back when I returned. When my route, we were done solving on the unsolved route status, I checked to make sure that my route is done, so the status is completed. And what I did is I took the route that was returned to me, and I created a graphic, as you can see, the polyline right there, and I added that graphic to my graphics overlay. And another thing that I did, even though it happened so fast and you guys didn't even realize that it happened, I even extracted the directions and I put it into a model. And now if I click on this button, I have the direction the directions for that route that I just solved right here. So another cool thing about QML is something that I don't have to recompile if the code change. I can basically just reload it. Right here, what I'm going to demo is the fact that I'm going to change the application that I have here. Right now, I have a combo box that has 3 base map layers. So when I choose in that combo box, let's say street, it will change, maybe because I don't zoom in enough, so I'm gonna pick another one that shows like a bigger difference, imagery. It will just swap my base map, right? But let's say I want to add another option to my combo box. What I can do is go into my code. Here you can see that I have 3, and I want to use the one below. Okay, and I just reload my code. Like right here, I didn't have to recompile and push all of that code back onto my iPad, like create a new IPA, and my code is actually updated. And now I have my 4th base map right here. It never happened before. It only happens when I'm presenting. So Michael, can we just swap back quickly to you so I can show the last slide?
Actually, yeah, while Jen is getting back, I have this running now. There we go. So as I stick it under the table, you can actually see that the property binding's kicking in, and it's switching us to our dark theme. Just wanted to make sure you guys all got that. You good?
Almost there, almost there.
We planned that.
Yes, it was all planned. So Michael has the time to like show you that UI changes. So how do we use QML within Esri? So you all know we have the ArcGIS Runtime SDK for Qt, so we have the QML API. App Studio as well has Survey 123 uses QML. And even for our runtime core that is shared among all the runtime code uses QML to do their testing. Like it's what the framework that they use to do their testing because it's cross-platform. So it's easy for them to test their functionality there. Okay, so before we go to question time, I just want you guys to take the time to take our survey. There you just have to go to the Esri Events app, go to Dev Summit, select this session, scroll down, give us some feedback and some comments, because we really build on those feedbacks. Like last year, you guys were telling us that you wanted more demos in the JavaScript function and showing the different functionality and how to do it instead of like using slides. So we came up with this presentation to show you how we can all do that programmatically, right? So your feedback really help us make a better presentation and better demo. And last, questions?
Anybody have any questions about that? No questions? All right. Pretty straightforward. All right, good.